Hello friends, welcome to Mars Academy. In this video, we are discussing physics examination for grade 9 advanced term 2 2022. Before we start discussing the question, I would like to request you to please subscribe this channel. Thank you for subscribing, and we will continue with question number 1. What is the horizontal acceleration of a projectile? We know that on a projectile only one force is acting, that is force of gravity. Force of gravity is the only force acting on a projectile. Force of gravity is acting vertically downwards, and there is no force acting on the projectile in a horizontal direction. No force along horizontal direction. As there is no force acting along the horizontal direction, the acceleration of projectile along the horizontal direction is zero. If no force, no acceleration. Remember that. If there is no force in the horizontal direction, no acceleration. No acceleration means zero acceleration. No force means no acceleration. Question number 2. A friction force of 10 Newton is acting on a block moving on a horizontal rough surface as shown in the figure. If the coefficient of friction is 0.2, what is given in this question? In this question, the force of friction given, force of friction is equal to 10 Newton and coefficient of friction that we will represent by the letter mu, that is equal to 0.2, and you are asked to calculate the weight. For an object on a horizontal surface, its weight is equal to normal force. So for an object that is laying on a horizontal surface, the weight of the object, that is force of gravity, which is equal to normal force. So here in this question, what you need to calculate? You need to calculate the normal force. When you calculate the normal force, you will get the weight of the object. So if the force of friction given, coefficient of friction given, and normal force you need to calculate. So what is the equation to calculate normal force? We have normal force is equal to force of friction divided by coefficient of friction. Where did we get this equation? We got this equation from the equation of friction. We have equation of friction is equal to coefficient of friction multiplied normal force. From this equation, we can write normal force is equal to force of friction divided by coefficient of friction. Force of friction is 10 Newton and coefficient of friction is 0.2. So normal force is equal to 50 Newton. So what is the weight of the object? The weight of the object that we represent force of gravity, that is equal to 50 Newton. Because if the object is on a horizontal surface, then weight is equal to normal force acting on that object. So our answer here is 50 Newton. 50 Newton is the correct answer. Question number 3. A player kicks a ball with an initial velocity vi from the ground with an angle theta. What is the ball's velocity as it reaches maximum height? As the ball reaches maximum height, its vertical velocity will be 0. Vertical velocity will be 0 and it will have a horizontal velocity. What is the horizontal velocity? At the beginning, horizontal velocity is vi cos theta. So this horizontal velocity will be constant throughout the motion. So here vi cos theta is the horizontal velocity and its vertical velocity is 0. So when the object is reaching the maximum height, when the ball reaches maximum height, the ball will have only the horizontal velocity. So its velocity at a maximum height, that is equal to vi cos theta. So this is our answer. Question number 4. Displacement and forces in 2 dimensions. Salim walks 60 meter east and 80 meters south. So I will draw the diagram here. This is our north side, this is south, this is west, and this is east. To remember, what I do is I just remember like this V. So Salim walks 60 meter east, 60 meter east, and then walks 80 meters south, 80 meter south. What is the magnitude of the resultant displacement? Resultant displacement will be always from the starting point to the end. So this is the resultant displacement. So you can see these two displacements, 60 meter and 80 meter, makes an angle 90 degree. So if two displacement makes an angle 90 degree, then this resultant displacement is equal to square root of 60 squared plus 80 squared. We are using the Pythagorean theorem. When you do this calculation, you will get 100 meters. 100 meter is the answer. Question number 5. What is the net force acting on the block in this figure? So here you can see this 8 Newton force and this 8 Newton force, 10 Newton force and 10 Newton force, they are acting in the opposite direction. Two equal forces acting in the opposite direction, so they cancels each other. They balances each other. So this force and this force balance each other. What is remaining? This 50 Newton force and the 7 Newton force, they are acting in the opposite directions. So if two forces are acting in the opposite direction, then we calculate the resultant using by finding the difference, right? So 15 is the larger force. 15 minus 7, that is equal to 8 Newton, and the direction of resultant will be always along the direction of the greater force. So it will be upright because 15 Newton is a greater force which is acting in the upward direction. Question number 6. When a projectile is launched at an angle, what's true about its horizontal velocity during its flight? We know that there is no force acting along the horizontal direction, so no acceleration along the horizontal direction. So horizontal velocity will be remains the same, right? Horizontal velocity does not change. Why? Because there is no acceleration along the horizontal direction. Why there is no acceleration? Because no force. If no force, no acceleration. So the velocity will be same, means velocity doesn't change. The graph shows the relationship between the friction force and normal force acting on block moving on a rough surface. What does the slope of line equal? See, this is question number 7. Slope is always y by x, right? Slope of a graph is y by x. So slope, that is equal to, what is on y-axis? On y-axis is force of friction, and on the x-axis is normal force. So force of friction divided by normal force, that is called coefficient of friction. So slope of friction against normal force graph will give coefficient of friction. So if the object is moving, then coefficient of kinetic friction. If the object is at rest, it will be coefficient of static friction. The figure shows, question number 8, the figure shows three vectors L, M and N. Which of the following is true for the vectors? So here you can see L, see this arrow, see the direction. Then this is the third vector, right? See the direction of the arrow is opposite. So this is the resultant. We understand the resultant from the direction of the arrow. See here, L going, and this is continuation, right? See the arrow continuation, head going like this, right? So this is head, and then tail. Head is joining with the tail, like it's going. See here, head and head join means this one is in the opposite direction, right? So this M is the resultant. So what I can write M is equal to L plus N, because M is the resultant. M is equal to L plus N. So this is the answer. Question number 9. A vector D is shown in the figure. What are the components of D? So here its x component will be 4 meter and y component will be 0, right? Because this vector is along the x direction, along the horizontal direction. So its x component is 4 meter and y component will be 0. In tug of war, a game as shown in the figure, one team is pulling the rope with a force of 300 Newton to the east and the second is pulling 400 Newton. What is the resultant force? So 400 Newton west and 300 Newton east. So resultant will be, these are very simple questions. Resultant will be 400 minus 300, that is equal to 100 Newton west. All questions here that we discussed up to now, all the questions are very simple and very easy. The figure shows two forces Fa and Fb, which of the following vector represent equilibrant of the two vectors. See, what is the meaning of equilibrant? Equilibrant is negative of the resultant, which means equilibrant will be equal to resultant, but direction will be opposite. So here, these are the two vectors. So what will be the resultant? Resultant will be like this, right? So equilibrant will be same as resultant, but only the difference is direction will be opposite. So this is the equilibrant vector. This is the resultant vector, right? So equilibrant vector, this is our answer. Two balls with a mass m and b with a mass 2m are dropped same time from same height. Ignore the air resistance. Which of the following is true? Say if they are dropped from same height at same time, both will reach the ground at same time. Why? Because the acceleration of a falling object does not depend on the mass of the object. So the two balls will fall with the same acceleration of two objects irrespective of their mass. Acceleration of a falling object does not depend on the mass. So both objects will be falling with the same acceleration, they will be falling with the same speed, and both the object will take same time to reach the ground, and they will reach the ground at same time if they are dropped from same height, even though their masses are different. Question number 13. A 5 kilogram bucket of water is pulled up using a rope. The bucket is moving with constant velocity. What is the tension in the rope? If any object is moving with constant velocity, which means the forces are balanced, the upward force and downward force will be equal. The tension force of tension, that is equal to the force of gravity. So what is the force of gravity? The mass of the bucket is 5 kilogram. So 5 multiplied 9.8. So you will get the weight of the bucket. And the tension in the rope will be equal to weight of the bucket. Why? Because opposite forces are equal. Why opposite forces are equal? Because the bucket is in equilibrium. How do we know the bucket is in equilibrium? We know because the bucket is moving with a constant speed. So the answer is 49 Newton. That is equal to the tension in the rope. Question number 14. Ahmed is pushing a couch on the floor as shown in the figure. He is exerting a force F equals to maximum static friction. The couch is not moving. What happens if Ahmed exerts a larger force? Say if Ahmed exerts a larger force, the applied force is greater than the maximum value of static friction, so the couch will accelerate. Couch will accelerate. Why the couch accelerate? Because now there is a resultant force. Why there is a resultant force? Because now applied force is greater than the maximum value of static friction. One of the force is greater than the opposite force. So there will be a net force along this direction. So the couch will accelerate along the direction of the larger force. Question number 5. Which of the following is true about friction force? Friction forces are always perpendicular to the normal force. The friction force are always parallel to the normal force. This is not correct. Friction forces are always opposite to the normal force. Not correct. The friction forces are always equal to the normal force. That is not correct. So friction forces are always perpendicular to the normal force. That is the correct statement. A vector R that is equal to 20 Newton makes an angle 60 degree with the negative x-axis. What is the x component of R? So x component of R will be negative, right? So we always take the angle from the positive x-axis. So here angle theta that is equal to 180 minus 60, which is equal to 120 degree. X component is always cos theta, so Rx is equal to R cos 120. What is the value of R? R is 20 Newton, right? So 20 multiplied cos 120 equals negative 10. So negative 10 Newton is the X component. X component that is equal to negative 10 Newton. Question number 17. When a projectile is launched horizontally, which of the following is a correct vector representation of horizontal and vertical component of its velocity? Horizontal velocity is constant throughout the motion and vertical velocity is increasing. So this is correct. Why this one is not correct? Horizontal velocity Vx is constant and Vy is increasing. So here you can see the length of Vy is decreasing. So this is not correct answer. Here you can see the length of the arrow, horizontal velocity is increasing and vertical velocity also increasing. This is not correct because horizontal velocity must be constant. Here horizontal velocity decreasing, that is why this is not correct. Question number 18. Saleh is pushing 8 kilogram box on a rough horizontal surface with a 50 Newton force. The friction force on the box is 10 Newton. What is the acceleration of the box? So acceleration is always net force over mass. So here two forces are acting, they are acting in the opposite direction. 50 Newton force is acting forward and 10 Newton frictional force is acting backward. So net force is 50 minus 10 divided by mass of the box, that is 8 kilogram. So 50 minus 10 is equal to 40. 40 divided by 8, which is equal to 5. 5 meter per second squared is the value of acceleration of the box. So this is the correct answer. Question number 19. A suitcase is at rest on an inclined plane as shown. Which of the following is true? So here you can see four forces are given. In that the force of friction, here F is given force of static friction, that is equal and opposite to Fg sine theta, and the normal force Fn, that is equal and opposite to Fg cos theta. The negative sign just to represent the direction is opposite. So we know that the force of static friction, that is equal and opposite to Fg sine theta, that is the parallel component of the weight of the object. Question number 20. A ball is pushed to move on a table as shown in the figure. As it reaches the end of the table, it flies off with a horizontal velocity of 0.5 meter per second and reach the floor after 1.2 seconds. How far from the end of the table does it land? So you need to calculate this displacement, right? Horizontal displacement that we represent by delta x. To calculate delta x, you know that to calculate horizontal distance traveled by a projectile, you have only one equation, that is velocity along the horizontal direction multiplied the time taken. What is the velocity along the horizontal direction? That is 0.5, that is given in the question, multiplied the time taken, that is 1.2 seconds. 0.5 multiplied 1.2, that is equal to 0.6 meter. So 0.6 meter is the distance traveled. Question number 21. Ahmed is pushing a wooden box with a weight 500 Newton across a wooden floor at a constant speed. He exerts 200 Newton force on the box. What is the coefficient of friction? Say, to calculate coefficient of friction, you must know the value of friction. That is the only way to calculate coefficient of friction. To calculate coefficient of friction, you must know the value of friction. So how much is the frictional force acting here? Frictional force acting, that is equal to 200 Newton. So you may wonder, how did we get frictional force is equal to 200 Newton? That we get from here. See, the box is moving at a constant speed, right? If any object is moving at a constant speed, the opposite forces acting on the object will be equal. If any object is moving at a constant speed, opposite forces are equal. So here you can see the force of friction is opposite to this 200 Newton. So force of friction will be equal to 200 Newton. So now we know the value of force of friction. And we have this equation. Force of friction is equal to coefficient of friction multiplied normal force. Coefficient of friction is equal to, from this equation, this is force of friction. Force of friction divided by normal force. So what is the value of force of friction? That is 200 Newton. What is the value of normal force? Normal force will be always equal to the weight of the object if the object is on a horizontal surface. Force of friction will be equal to, contact, so normal force. The normal force will be equal to the weight of the object if the object is on a horizontal surface. So here you can see this box is on a horizontal surface. So the normal force acting on the block will be equal to the weight of the block, that is 500. So 200 divided by 500, that is equal to 0.4. And coefficient of friction is a quantity without any unit. And coefficient of friction will be always less than 1. The figure shows a box at a rest on a table. There are three forces acting on the box. Which of the following is true for the vectors of these forces? So one force, that is the force you are applying, F1 is the force you are applying on the box, you are applying an upward force, and F2 is the normal contact force, and F3 is the force of gravity that is acting on the box. So we know that if the object is not moving, see the box is at rest, right? So the object is in equilibrium, which means opposite forces are equal. So here there are two forces acting upward, one force is acting downward. So we can say the downward force F3 that is equal to upward force F1 plus F2. That is total upward force is equal to total downward force. There are two forces are acting upright, F1 and F2. So we are adding that because they are acting upwards. And only one force is acting downward, F3. Opposite means upward force is equal to total downward force. Why? Because forces are in equilibrium. How do we know forces are in equilibrium? We know because the object is at rest, the object is not moving. And if we need the sign like downward force, we will write negative. So this is our answer. Question number 23. Displacement and forces in two dimensions. Which of the following is the force exerted from one surface on another when there is no motion between two surfaces? That is static friction, right? There are two types of friction, static friction and kinetic friction. Static friction means friction acting when the object is not moving. Kinetic friction is friction acting when the object is not moving. Object means while the object is moving. So here you can see in this question they are asking what is the force acting when object is not in motion. When there is no motion between two surfaces. So when there is no motion, the force acting, that is called static friction. Question number 24. A stone is thrown horizontally from a cliff. It lands on ground after 3 seconds. What is the height of the cliff? So if you know the time, you want to calculate the height, right? So you can calculate the height delta y using the equation half multiplied g multiplied time squared half gt squared. Where did I get this equation? I got this equation from delta y, that is equal to initial velocity into time plus half multiplied acceleration multiplied time squared. So here initial velocity along the vertical direction is 0. For any horizontal motion, if you throw an object in the horizontal direction, its initial velocity along the vertical direction will be 0. So if this term is 0, what is remaining? Delta y, that is equal to half gt squared. So equal to half multiplied g is 9.8 minus 9.8, right? Multiplied t is 3 squared. 3 squared will be 9. So 0.5 multiplied negative 9.8 multiplied 3 squared, that is equal to 44.1. The negative just to represent the displacement is downward. So your answer will be 44.1 meter. Question number 25. Which of the following object is not in equilibrium? A car moving in a constant acceleration. This is the answer. Why? Because equilibrium means the net force acting on the object is equal to 0. Means forces are balanced. When forces are balanced, the acceleration will be 0. The object will move at a constant velocity or the object will be at rest. So question is, which of the following object is not in equilibrium? Any object that is accelerating will not be in equilibrium. And any object, if its acceleration is zero, the object is in equilibrium. So here a book at rest, acceleration is equal to zero, right? So the object is in equilibrium. A box rest, acceleration is equal to zero, object is in equilibrium. An object is moving at a constant velocity. Constant velocity means acceleration is equal to zero, object is in equilibrium. If any object is accelerating, the object will not be in equilibrium. So car moving with a constant acceleration, that is our answer to this question. We have discussed all the 25 questions from grade 9 advanced physics examination term 2 2022. Thank you all my friends, all my students for watching this video. I would like to wish you great success in your examination and in your life ahead. And at the end, I would like to request you to subscribe this channel. And once again, thank you all students and my friends for watching this video.